I shamelessly danced with a colleague at a work party. My husband received a recording, and I was thoroughly and absolutely shameless. I could have avoided all of this mess if I didn't think I could get away with everything I was doing. I wish I listened to my friends when they told me that I wouldn't get away with it. I didn't listen, not even to my gut screaming. And now I'm paying dearly for it. I shamelessly danced with a colleague at a work party, and my husband, he received a recording, and now I no longer have a home to go back to, and not even a single penny to my name. I really thought I had it under control, to be honest. But I clearly have no control over everything that has been happening. It's more like each day is worse than the last. I'm so tired of this. I'm really disgusted with myself thinking about everything I have done. I wish for several things that I know I will never have access to ever again. Like having Simon again. I feel so awful, and honestly the guilt keeps piling up every single day. The truth is, I got lucky with Simon. Out of all the women he could have had, out of all his options, he chose me. That still blows my mind sometimes. I met him about 5 years ago at work. The company was his baby. He started it right out of college with just a handful of people, and by the time he hit 40, it had grown into this really solid, successful firm. People at the office always talked about how smart he was with money, how he'd predict trends before anyone else. By the time I joined, he wasn't in the office every day because of some health issues, so his nephew Matt was running things for a while, but Simon still dropped by now and then, walking around the floors like he actually knew everyone by name. I remember seeing him just standing there sometimes, coffee in hand, quietly watching how everything was going. That's when I first really noticed him. Not in some big meeting, but in those small, everyday moments. I remember how I had just gotten my dream job as an executive secretary to Matt, and how excited I was. Funny how on my first day of work, I met Simon. The fun part? I didn't even know who he was when he came and requested to see the boss. But I guessed that he was someone important if he had been allowed all the way past the securities and the receptionist, without any prior appointment. Simon always told me that he fell in love with my smile the first day we met. I always loved when he told his own version of how we met. As I walked past, you lifted your head and smiled at me. I knew I was going to marry you that day. That's how he always would say it. My Simon. Although now he must hate me so much and probably wants to forget every moment we shared together. Because I deceived him and lied to him. And words can't express how deeply I regret everything I did. Simon easily got my number, and he texted me to invite me for lunch. By that time, I already knew exactly who he was, and honestly, I wanted to take advantage of his interest in me to quickly advance in my career. I never even guessed at that time that we were going to end up getting married. But within a month of meeting with Simon frequently on dates, he asked me to marry him. We got married in court and didn't do much after that. Simon hadn't wanted something big, and I agreed with him, even though it was because of my own selfish reasons. I didn't really want the world to know. Everyone around us, especially from his side, thought something else of me. To them, I was with Simon for his money and the better life he could provide. I was labeled as a gold digger. They didn't think I was marrying him because I genuinely loved him. They weren't exactly wrong. I wasn't fully in love with Simon when we got married. I just really liked how he took care of me, and I may have thought of the inheritance that he would leave me. But I didn't like anyone pointing it out. I hated when they called me a gold digger. Even his nephew, who I worked for, was skeptical about my true intentions for his uncle. Our age difference was massive, so of course everyone thought that. Even my parents. They asked me if I was really sure I wasn't doing it because I wanted money. Simon was nearly 50 when we met, and I was only 28 at that point. So I guess everyone's point was reasonable. So I made sure that I continued working. Not because I wanted to, but I just wanted to prove them wrong. Because nobody else knew about the trust fund that Simon set for me immediately we were married. Simon didn't even know that I knew about it. I would only get to access it if I stayed married to him until he was. I know what you must already think of me. I already think even worse of myself, so. I kept playing as an independent woman despite the fact that Simon gave me money every time bigger than the salary I earned in a month. I pretended like I wasn't using his money for anything, even though my online shopping history says otherwise. 2 years into our marriage, I was considering quitting my job. Everyone was already coming to terms with everything. They didn't strongly believe what they did before anymore. So I thought it was the perfect time to relax. I started skipping work and would go to some spa restaurant or any fancy place that caught my eye. Nobody could complain. I was the boss's wife, and Matt had to hand over everything to his assistant while he traveled out of the country to deal with our other branches. So I didn't answer anyone. I was free to do whatever I wanted, and I did, and I really was about to quit, but I didn't. This time it wasn't because I was scared of what anyone was going to say. It was because of him, a guy, Tyson. Tyson was newly employed to replace a worker who suddenly quit because he got a better offer somewhere else. He was young, handsome, everything that Simon wasn't. To be honest, I did try to fight my instant attraction to him. I didn't want anything to affect my relationship with Simon, but seeing him in his nice suit each day with perfectly styled hair and a smile, it drew me in. There was the fact that we had to work closely together. He noticed me too. He would wink at me and compliment my hairstyle or my dress each time. Tyson already knew who I was married to, of course, but that didn't stop him from flirting with me, giving me several hints that he wanted to be with me. I liked it too much, and coming to work constantly became my everyday muse. I know that I shouldn't have. I should have fought my attraction to him. I shouldn't have allowed him to get as close as he had done. Within a month of Tyson working at the company, he had gotten my number, which I stylishly suggested him to have, so we could discuss work even when we weren't at the office. Tyson and I started to text so often. I was always on the phone talking to him. He made me feel things that I thought I would never feel. I told him everything. My reasons for getting married to Simon. I even told him about the trust fund that I didn't tell anyone else about. I can't say how it happened, but from just plain casual conversations, we switched to deeper ones, and somehow before that week was over, Tyson and I were discussing meeting outside of work for the first time. We could have chosen public places to avoid everything that happened afterwards. There were different restaurants and other open places to meet up. But Tyson had invited me to his house instead. He lied to me, said he only ate homemade meals. He said that he was a great cook and would make us something to eat. I also lied to Simon, told him I was meeting with my friends, that I had barely hung out with since I met Tyson. Simon trusted me and didn't doubt the lies that I was telling. When I arrived at Tyson's house, he had cooked already, and we only just sat to eat. Then he suggested watching a movie together. I should have just left after eating. Then maybe it wouldn't have happened, but I stayed back. I even sat beside him with barely any space between us. It was a horror movie, my favorite genre, something I already told Tyson about. There was nothing in the movie to make me feel hot, but I was. I felt so hot so much that when Tyson leaned in, I said nothing. When he kissed me, I still said nothing. I didn't push him away, hit him or warn him never to do that again, and then leave. I sat there and allowed him to touch me the way he wanted. I even stupidly participated when he was struggling with his trousers in his haste. I helped him out and even showed him how to remove my button without ruining it. I wanted to avoid any suspicions when I got home by showing up in a ruined dress. We had sex that day, and by the time I was ready to go, it was in the evening. When I got home, Simon had been waiting for me. He had been worried when he called to check on me, and I hadn't picked up the phone. It was only then I checked my phone and realized that he had truly called me. I had been carried away that I hadn't noticed my phone ringing 8 different times. To cover up my tracks, I lied again, said something about my phone being silent, and that I lost track of time, all night. After being with Tyson, I laid in bed and thought of everything I had done. Instead of guilt, I felt pleasure. Tyson had been insatiable, and my sore body kept reminding me of what I had done, and his text that night. "You were amazing today. Can't wait to see you again." I wanted a repeat of it. I managed to convince myself that I was doing the right thing. Tyson understood that there could be nothing more. His fiancée was back in his hometown. Wearing his ring didn't make him greedy for more, and the money he got to satisfy his needs was more than enough. I felt like I was doing myself a favor. Simon wasn't agile enough, especially in bed, and he always left me unsatisfied most of the time. With Tyson, I was satisfied and happy. I know it's such a foolish and selfish thing to do, but Tyson made it difficult for me to think beyond that. We sneaked off any time we had the chance to, just to have sex, and he got me really addicted to him, to the point that spending time alone with Simon became a chore. I was always thinking of the next time I could get alone with Tyson, But if I had been wise enough, I would have realized that it wouldn't last. I would have thought of the what ifs. What if Simon found out? Or what if he never forgave me? What if he decides to have his revenge on me? I didn't think. I was just so greedy, and I wanted it all to myself. But I guess what they say is really true. You can't eat your cake and have it, right? I couldn't have both Simon and Tyson, and I am now suffering for the option I had subconsciously chosen, because Simon found out. In the most awful way possible. The only two people who knew about Tyson and I were my two best friends, and I had told them only to brag. But they had been shocked instead of being pleased and in awe of me. They advised me to end things with Tyson before everything got out of hand. But I refused. I didn't want anyone telling me what to do, and we fought about it. They told me that day that they would only hang out with me again when I ended things with Tyson. Did I listen? No. I didn't care that they wanted to end our friendship. I wanted to continue sleeping with Tyson, so I dismissed them, and even when they reached out to me first, I ignored them. After 4 months of sleeping with Tyson, I started to get really bold. I thought that no one suspected us together, and that I was getting away with my lies easily. I started to invite him over to the house. Whenever Simon had to travel to get his medical checkup or some other important trip that required his presence, Tyson would come over and we would spend the day together in my matrimonial bed. I even laughed. I stupidly would laugh when Tyson mocked Simon's sexual life. I joined in the mockery of Simon. Stupidly. I was so caught up in my lies and affair that Elle never really thought of the consequences that didn't happen until last week. After 6 months of sleeping with Tyson, a small slip, a little alcohol was all it took, and I totally ruined my life with my own hands. That day, that horrible day that is now forever etched in my mind, was meant to celebrate the company's 30th anniversary. Simon had a minor health scare again and couldn't be present. And his nephew had to host the other branch's celebration, so he couldn't be at ours. Simon entrusted everything to me. I was supposed to handle things as his wife and even make his speech on his behalf. I wanted everything to be perfect, and I spent ridiculous amounts of money to make sure of that. I wanted to give everyone a party they would never forget. Even though it was meant for staff alone, I asked everyone to bring a +1, except Tyson. His fiancée, who had come visiting that week, had been a hindrance to our wild affair, and I was upset, like I had some right to be. So Elle banned him from bringing her, especially since I was going to be alone at the party too. When the day of the party came, it turned out to be more of club fun than work fun. I had alcohol brought in and made sure everyone was having the time of their lives. I even felt fulfilled. When everyone kept telling me that I planned the best party, I didn't even say Simon's speech for him, the one he had written down by himself. It was inside my bag, which I had dropped in the office and didn't remember to bring downstairs. It was clear that everyone was having fun, dancing and drinking like they didn't care about anything else, or anyone. And I was doing the same thing too. Drinking until I was tipsy, and suddenly I felt like dancing with the crowd. I grabbed Tyson and pulled him to the dance floor. I was whining and twisting shamelessly like I didn't care who watched me. I didn't mind where I was anymore. I kept dancing until I decided to leave the party. I wish I could blame my stupid acts on the drinks I had taken that night, but I cannot. It was all me. The drinks only gave me more boldness to act out. I led Tyson back inside the office. This time I didn't bother with the door or which office we were in. I believed strongly that no one would catch us. Tyson hesitated, but not for long. I removed my dress, which I wore with no underwear underneath. It was enough to convince him that it was a perfect idea. We had sex in the office that day, and after we were done, I put on my clothes, went downstairs, and pretended to be the perfect host again. I couldn't drive home that night, and so when the party was over, I stayed at a hotel close to the company. Tyson would have stayed with me, but he had to get home to his fiancée. I didn't know that my nightmare was about to start the very next day. When I got home, Simon wasn't there. I didn't bother much about it, though. I still thought that everything was all right. I texted him and asked where he was, but I got no reply. I still wasn't bothered. Even though Simon always replied to my texts almost immediately, I thought he was just busy, but he didn't reply all day and didn't call either. I was getting worried until Simon showed up in the evening. He said nothing to me at first, just walked to his study and locked the door. It was so unusual, and I didn't know what to think. But I thought maybe something about work came up, and I didn't bother disturbing him. I was about to go to bed that night when Simon finally walked into the room. He asked me a direct question. "What have you been doing behind my back?" I was confused, and I tried to ask him what he meant. I still thought that there was no way Simon found out about my affair, so I assumed that he was talking about something else, something different. But Simon wasn't laughing. He wasn't even smiling at me like he had always done all the times I've known him for. Simon didn't feel like the man I knew. He felt cold, like a stranger, when I wouldn't give him an accurate response. He tossed a phone to the bed. It was his second phone, the one he used for work. I picked it up and checked what was on it. But to my shock and horror, it was me. And Tyson. A video of me tweaking and twisting with Tyson behind me was playing on his phone. I didn't know what to say. I just kept staring at it. Simon watched me silently, and it was his silence that broke me. Worse than if he had actually shouted. I knelt beside the bed and begged. I cried hard, explaining everything without any prompting. I was scared. I thought that Simon had other evidence of my affair and had only brought that one out to find out if I was going to tell the truth. So I told him everything. How it all started and the poor excuses I gave myself to do the things I did. I swore to him that I loved him and that I wanted to be with him alone. I vowed that I would never cheat on him ever again. Simon was shocked, and I watched his shock turn into anger. He asked me if I had another lover besides Tyson, and I told him no. Simon said nothing after that. He only made a phone call. It was to the security guard. He wanted him to come up to the room. I didn't even guess what it was for until he told the man to throw me out of the house with nothing. I was desperate. I tried grabbing Simon and begging again. I kept swearing that I would be loyal to him, but Simon wasn't listening to me, and the security guard just wanted to do his job. So he pushed me out of the house and locked it up. It didn't matter to Simon that I had nowhere else to go that night. I spent the night in the garage, hoping that by morning Simon would let me in and allow me to apologize. But nothing of such happened. Because that morning I faced another judgment. Simon didn't leave the house, and it didn't matter to him how much I knocked or pleaded. He refused to open the door. I had to eventually leave when it was mid-afternoon, and I still had no response from him. I was scared to go to my parents. I feared that Simon would reach them first, so I went to my friends instead. But once they saw my appearance in my dirty nightgown, from spending the night at the garage, they asked me questions that I had no choice but to answer sincerely. They turned me away after giving me a dress to change into, said they didn't want any part in my problems. I made my bed, so I had to lie in it. I tried spending the night at a hotel, but I ended up being embarrassed when I couldn't even afford to pay for it. Simon had blocked my access to my account, so I had no access to any of the money there. I had no choice but to go home. How I got home is another story, but it's a different thing I met at home too. My parents didn't send me away like my friends had. Simon had gotten to them first, just like I suspected. He told them everything, and they just simply hate me now. Even my sister, who had always adored me, just never says anything anymore. The house is so tense because I'm there. Everyone keeps ignoring me, and it's so painful. I couldn't even bring myself to go to work to get my things there. Not after the email I got. I was fired and even sued for using company funds for my own selfish reasons. All the money that I stole, confident that they weren't going to miss a few millions. They somehow found out about it, and I'm in a lot of debt right now. Simon wants me to suffer for everything. He hates me. I know he does. And it's all my fault. I cheated on him with someone like Tyson, who is a coward. He called me only once since the whole thing happened and blamed me for everything. He also lost his job, and Simon had apparently promised to make sure he never got to work in a corporate world ever again. And his fiancée, who found out, abandoned him too. It just makes me regret now more than ever, forever thinking that it was a good idea getting together with someone like him. I'm left with nothing and no one because of an affair. Everything around me just keeps falling apart, and I cannot even hold it together. My parents have refused to have anything to do with the debts I've acquired. Sometimes I wish I could just disappear and run away from this mess. But I cannot. I'm sure that Simon would hunt me down anywhere and make me pay for everything. The divorce letter sitting in my drawer is another proof. I know that me coming here to write this, saying how much I regret the way things turned out, will never make up for everything I did or make this go away. I just thought that coming out with everything like this will reduce this permanent ache on my heart. But it's a lie. I don't think there's anything that will ever make up for this. I will never recover from this. Not from the debts or the pain, or the torture of seeing everyone move on with their lives, me. Simon will never see me as the same person again. Neither will my family or friends. To them, I'm only just a selfish, greedy person who got what she deserved, and it's all true.